Good evening. On behalf of the Right Honourable, the Lord Mayor of York and the Civic Party, I'm very pleased to welcome you to York St John University as we commemorate Holocaust Memorial Day. I would like to thank everybody who has contributed to making tonight possible, from the participants, including students from our School of Arts, to the Holocaust Memorial Day Committee and our Civic Party for working so hard to bring us all together this evening. Together, we seek to remember and learn from genocides, both past and more recent. We collectively empathise with the destruction and devastation they cause, and strive to address the prejudices and misplaced ideologies which often facilitate oppression. This year's Holocaust Memorial event sees us embrace the theme of ordinary people, people just like us. So we embrace the theme of ordinary people as we explore their multifaceted roles in enabling, perpetuating, resisting, and facing persecution. And of course, for many of those ordinary people, the ultimate sacrifice was made. Although when I was younger, I was aware of the Holocaust, largely from studying A-level history, I had never really understood the full impact of what occurred. Some years ago, I became a visiting professor at the University of Warsaw, making an annual visit to intensively teach modules on language disorders. I spent quite a lot of time on my own, wandering around a very dark, cold and gloomy city in late November, at the very end of communist rule, with leaded petrol fumes in the air and freezing fog. I'm trying to create the ambience for you. What's very noticeable is that monuments to Jewish families and to sites of atrocities are very apparent, particularly in the area that previously housed the Warsaw Ghetto, where parts of the University of Warsaw now stand. Many of the monuments are very small. I don't know what they say. They're quite discreet, but they often have flowers and toys on them, and it's very moving. Others are really imposing. It's actually very easy to walk past Umschlagplatz, which is shown here. You normally just simply walk along the street and you see the beautiful marble, but that's really all you see. That photograph shows you what this commemorates. It's the site where people living in the Warsaw Ghetto were loaded into trains, largely bound for Auschwitz. The numbers taken were absolutely staggering. I was determined to read more about what happened and why. Why could this possibly occur? Reading more extensively about that period is truly shocking, but the bravery and courage of ordinary people really shines out. Just down the road at the next junction is the monument to the fallen and the murdered in the East. So this is the monument. Each of the sleepers shows the places where Polish people were deported to slave labour camps and gulags. The monument is incredibly detailed. Catholic, Orthodox, Jewish and Muslim symbols are included in the incredibly detailed monument. However, it's on a really busy roundabout in an enormous road intersection. It's surrounded by cars and buildings, commercial hoardings. It's actually quite easy not to particularly register it during the day, especially if you're in a hurry. But at night, it's lit up with a really vivid blue light. Actually not very easy to show it in photographs, but the effect of that light is that you can't miss the monument, and it has the effect of the crosses seeming to go up to heaven. It's important to remember that the people commemorated here were not saints. They were ordinary people, treated appallingly by other people in the name of ideology. The famous piles of shoes at Auschwitz is a vivid reminder of those ordinary people. We should never forget those people in order to ensure that these things are never repeated. In the last few years, a dedicated Holocaust museum has been opened in Warsaw, designed by Daniel Liebeskind. It tries to explain how and why these things could have occurred, and it's well worth a visit if you're ever in Warsaw. We all have a part to play in opposing injustice. At York St John University, we value opportunities such as this, which bring communities together to think about a common aim. Our university mission to promote social justice stands strong today, and we tackle inequality through opening up opportunities for education, through our curriculum and research, and through active collaboration with partners across the city and the wider region. This is only possible because of our people, our staff and students who are so passionate about having a positive impact on the communities in which they live and work. And we try to support them as much as possible in that mission. So it's important that we think about the Holocaust because we know the consequences that can follow. So ordinary people, like all of us here, can be the true drivers for change. We have a part to play in standing up against injustices that we may see in everyday life. Our actions matter. No matter how small they are, they can make a difference. Tonight, we will hear from voices across our city and beyond, and I invite you to consider how you can help to create a future free from prejudice and cruelty. Thank you. I'm now pleased to welcome the Right Honourable, the Lord Mayor of York, David Carr, to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this year's Holocaust Memorial is ordinary people, a phrase I have interpreted as meaning those without power, either politically or militarily, a theme on which I will elaborate shortly. We are gathered here today to mark and remember and to reflect on the Holocaust and the more recent genocides which have taken place in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, and elsewhere. I will, however, focus in this brief address on that genocide of almost unimaginable scale which took place during the Second World War at the hands of the Nazis in Germany and Nazi-occupied territories, and which has become known as the Holocaust. An act so dark, so desolate, so devoid of God that it almost defies description. It certainly defies understanding. The premeditated murder of 6 million human beings, 30 times the population of York. And it happened not in some long ago brutal dark age, but within living memory, a handful of years before I was born. And it took place not in some despotic backwater, but almost on our doorstep, in Western Europe, the cradle of modern, advanced, scientific, industrial, high-cultured civilization. It took place in the land of Martin Luther, in the land of Goethe and Schiller, in the land of Beethoven and Schubert. How would those giants have portrayed this heinous act? That is, if they could have stopped weeping for long enough to do so. And it was the techniques of that very science and technology which were deployed to such devastating effect in realising this evil ambition. This was not killing in the blind rage of battle or in the red heat of all-out war. This was systematic, methodical, industrialised, batch-delivered, production line extermination of 6 million people. 6 million of our own species, humankind. By far the majority were Jews, but there are other communities as well. It certainly does defy understanding. Ordinary people. Of course, ordinary people were the victims of the Holocaust outrage, but ordinary people are also the bystanders, the disbelievers, the facilitators, and the perpetrators. Ordinary people like us. What would we have done? What would I have done? What would all of you have done? What could we have done? Let us hope we never have to make that awful judgment. But there were a few ordinary people of such towering courage that they were also rescuers and saviours. People who risked their own lives by hiding victims or secreting them to save havens. People like Nicholas Winton, who arranged the exit to safety in Britain of 670 children from Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia as part of the Kindertransport initiative. There is an incredibly moving excerpt, which you can find on the internet, of a TV programme called That's Life, broadcast in 1988, where the ageing and now Sir Nicholas Winton is seated in the audience. And unknown to him, he is surrounded by some of the children he rescued, now of course men and women in their 50s and 60s, and who then stand up in salute to their saviour. I defy anyone to watch that and not burst into tears. And so, on that tiny glimmer of hope and humanity, I will draw my opening address to a close and allow others to make their own contributions to Holocaust Memorial Day 2023. Thank you.
Hello, Doctor? Is that you? It's me, Judith Keith. I was just ringing to tell you I'm going away for a little while. No, not for long, but anyway, a few weeks. I want to go to Amsterdam. Said to be lovely there in the spring. No, I've got friends there. Plural, believe it or not. Who will you get for a fourth? Oh, come on, we haven't played for over a fortnight. Yeah, that's right, Fritz had a cold too. It's absurd to go on playing when it's as cold as this, I always say. Thekla had her mother there. I know. What put that idea into my head? I mean, it was nothing sudden and I just keep putting it off and I've really got to... Yeah, we'll have to cancel our cinema date. Remember me to Thekla, would you? Ring him up on a Sunday sometimes, perhaps. Yes, of course I will. Au revoir. Goodbye.
That you, Gertrude? It's Judy. I'm really sorry to disturb you. Thanks. I'm just calling to ask if you can check up on Fritz. I'm going away for a few months. Well, he can simply call you if you prefer it that way. Yes, I know he knows that we don't get on all that well, but yes, I'll tell him that. And the flat is on the big side, so you can leave his workroom to Ida to deal with. She knows what's to be done. I find her pretty intelligent, and Fritz is used to her. And there's another thing, I hope you don't mind me saying, but he doesn't like to talk before meals. Can you remember that? I used to catch myself. No, I don't want to argue about that right now. My train is in a few hours and I still haven't finished packing. And do remind him to go see his tailor. He's ordered a new overcoat. And remember to keep his bedroom properly heated. He likes to sleep with the window open and it's just too cold. No, I don't think he needs to toughen himself up. Anyway, I must ring off. I'm really grateful for you, Gertrude, and we'll write to each other, won't we? Thank you. Goodbye.
Well, Fritz, I suppose I'm off. I know I've left it too long and I'm awfully sorry, but Fritz, you have to let me go. You can't keep... I will be your downfall. I know you're not a coward and I know you're not scared of the police, but there are worse things. You won't be put in a camp, but they'll ban you from the clinic any day now. And I know you won't say anything at the time, but it'll make you ill. And I can't keep seeing you pretending to read magazines. It's pure selfishness on my part. My leaving, that is. And don't say anything, because I know you... Don't say you haven't changed. You have. I mean, just the other day we established quite objectively that the proportion of Jewish scientists aren't all that high. Quite objectively, always being the start of it. And why do you keep saying I've never been such a Jewish chauvinist as I am now? Of course I am one. Chauvinism is catching on. Oh, Fritz. What has happened to us?
I haven't told you I wanted to go away. I have done for a long time, but I can't talk when I look at you, Fritz. And it seems there's no words to be said. It's all settled already. What's got into them, do you think? What do they want? What am I doing to them? I've never been into politics. Did I vote communist? I was just one of those bourgeois housewives with servants and such. It seems only blondes can be that now. I've been thinking about something you told me once a long time ago. Some people are more valuable than others. So one lot were given insulin when they got diabetes. The others weren't. And I understood that. Idiot that I was. Well, now they've drawn a different distinction of the same sort. And I'm just one of the less valuable ones. Serves me right.
Yes, I'm packing. Don't pretend you haven't noticed anything the last few days. Nothing really matters, Fritz, except for just one thing. If we spend our last hour together without looking in each other's eyes, that's a triumph they can't be allowed. The liars who accept everyone else to lie. 10 years ago, when somebody said to me, nobody would think I was Jewish, you told me that they would. And that's fine. That was straightforward. Why take things in a roundabout way from now? I'm packing so they shan't take away your job as a senior physician, and because they've stopped saying good morning to you at the clinic, and because you're not sleeping nowadays. I'm hurrying because I don't want you to tell me I mustn't go. Don't get the idea that I'm angry. Yes, I am. Why should I always be understanding what's wrong with the shape of my nose and the colour of my hair? I'm to leave the town I was born so they shan't go short of butter. What kind of people are you, yourself included? You're monsters. Or you pander to monsters.
Yes, I know I'm being unreasonable. But what good is reason in a world like this? There you are, watching your wife pack and saying nothing. The walls have ears, is that it? But no one says anything. One lot listens, and the other one keeps silent. To hell with that. I'm supposed to keep silent too, and if I loved you, I would. I truly do love you, though. Give me those underclothes. They're suggestive. I'll need them. 36 isn't too old. But I can't do much more experimenting. The next time I settle in a country, things can't be like this. And the next man I get must be allowed to keep me. And don't pretend you're gonna send me money, because we both know you won't be allowed to. And you aren't to pretend this is a matter of 4 weeks either. This business is going to last rather more than 4 weeks. You know that, and so do I. So don't go telling me, after all, it's only for 2 or 3 weeks, as you hand me the fur coat I won't need till next winter. And let's not speak about disaster. Let's speak about disgrace. Oh, Fritz.
What are you doing? Tidying up?
No.
Why are you packing?
I want to get away.
What are you talking about?
I did mention the possibility of my going away for a little while. It's no longer very pleasant here.
That's a load of nonsense.
Do you want me to stay then?
Where are you going to go?
Amsterdam. Just away.
You've got nobody there.
No.
I suppose it's not such a bad idea. It's stifling in this place. You need a breather. I'll come and collect you when I'm feeling better.
Yeah. Why don't you?
Things are bound to change. It's going to die down, like an inflammation.
Definitely. Did you run into shock?
Yeah, just on the stairs, that's to say. I think they're starting to feel bad about the way they dropped us. I mean, after all, they can't keep sitting on filthy intellectuals like us. What time are you leaving then?
9:15.
And where am I to send money to?
Let's say post stand, Amsterdam main post office.
I'll see, they give me a special permit. God, I can't send my wife off with £30 a month. It's all a lousy business.
I rang Gertrude. She'll see you're all right.
It's quite unnecessary. For 2 or 3 weeks.
Can you hand me my fur coat?
After all, it's only 2 or 3 weeks.
Good evening. A few years ago, a friend of mine was invited to be the speaker at a prestigious event attended by the great and the good. So that's clearly why I wasn't there. But it was a friend who was invited. And the person who'd invited him made the introduction to my friend after everybody had wined and dined. And the introduction went on and on and on and on and on. Every aspect of my friend's life had been portrayed in lights. And my friend eventually stood up and made his way to the rostrum to speak and said, after an introduction like that, there is nothing more for me to say, and sat down. Now, I'm not going to make that mistake tonight, so that's why I'm going to invite Taras to make his own introduction, to do his own editing of highlights of your life. I'm not going to mention those, that's up to you entirely. We'll speak about it afterwards. And I'm delighted that he's here to share with us tonight on a matter which is often in our news and in our hearts as well. And he's going to bring us some reflections on the voice of Ukraine. Thank you, Taras.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me today to this year's Holocaust Memorial Day in York. To give a bit of a background about myself, I grew up in West Yorkshire and of mixed Ukrainian and Italian background, and most of my life I've been either an academic or a journalist. I thought moving back to England, where we lived in Holland previously, that I would be sort of running down and maybe writing a bit less than I had in the past, and my last book came out in late January of last year. I was so wrong. Somebody in Moscow called Vladimir Putin wouldn't allow me to go early into retirement. So I've been, unfortunately, had to continue my writing activities. I have a book coming out next month called Genocide and Fascism, Russia's War Against Ukrainians, published by Columbia University Press. Written jointly with my nephew who works at the BBC in Manchester, or Salford, sorry. I always have to get that right, Salford, not Manchester. I think a good way of beginning this presentation is by saying that 7 decades after what we thought Nazism and fascism was being defeated, its head is rising again. And I say this from the background of Ukraine, where 2 of the 6 million Jews who were murdered in World War II, in the Holocaust, were murdered in Ukraine. So the Holocaust has a very pertinent memory for what Timothy Snyder calls the bloodlands of Europe, particularly Poland, Ukraine, and Belarus, where most of these horrendous crimes took place. Of the 6 million, 4 of those were members of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's family. Volodymyr Zelensky is of Jewish Ukrainian background. The only person that survived from his family was his great-grandfather, who, because he wasn't at home, he was fighting in the Soviet army against the Nazis. So for Zelensky, I struggle to understand how it must be so difficult for him to grasp the fact that his family, which had perished in the Holocaust against Nazism, and he today is fighting the revival of that fascism against his country, Ukraine, on the part of Putin's Russia. The Holocaust in Ukraine came on the back of Stalinist terror in Ukraine, the Ukrainian famine, the artificial famine called the Holodomor, which murdered 4 to 5 million people. So a total of approximately 15 million Ukrainians died in the 1930s and 40s from Europe's two most evil totalitarian regimes, Nazism and communism, Stalinism. Ukrainian President Zelensky was born in the USSR in 1978. He celebrated his birthday at the age of 45 yesterday. Some of you may have seen him on Sky TV this morning in a long interview. 4 decades after he was born, he won a landslide election in Ukraine. He comes from a region of Ukraine called Dnipropetrovsk, sort of in the southeast of the country, which has had the biggest Jewish revival in Europe in the last 30 years. I've been there on a number of occasions, done research there. Incredibly interesting what's taken place there. That's now, of course, under threat from this war. Many of those Jews who I've interviewed in my research are fighting on the front lines for Ukraine. And this is coupled with Ukraine also being the place for the biggest Jewish gathering outside Israel that used to take place every year in Uman, which is south of the capital city, which is the birthplace of Hasidism in Ukraine. What the world is witnessing in Ukraine is difficult even for experts like myself to get their heads around. It's a mix of 19th century imperialism, 20th century fascism, taking place in 21st century Europe. We thought this wouldn't happen here. It is. There are only 2 countries in the world with being threatened to be wiped off the face of the earth. These are Israel by Iran and Ukraine by Russia. This unprovoked invasion and military aggression has murdered already close to the region of 100,000 combatants, civilians. The port city of Mariupol has been destroyed. This is a port which had 450,000 people. So following on from Aleppo in Syria and Grozny in Chechnya, completely flattened. Coupled with, of course, something in the region of 100,000 Russian soldiers who have been killed in 1 year. President Putin doesn't give a damn about not only Ukrainians or other people, Syrians, he doesn't give a damn about his own people. The deliberate bombing of civilian infrastructure is a war crime. To create coal, and the purpose being to create cold and unpleasant wintry conditions with the hope that then Ukrainians will capitulate and surrender. Capitulation is not something President Zelensky would ever agree to because it would lead to genocide. International lawyers are already beginning to use that epitaph towards, that label towards Ukraine. What's taken place as well is the biggest refugee crisis since World War II, with something in the region of 12-13 million Ukrainians either internally displaced or who have fled abroad. This brings back personal memories for myself. My father was taken at the age of 15 to be a slave laborer in Nazi Germany, and he, after World War II, didn't want to go back to the Soviet Union for obvious reasons, and he became a refugee in Britain in 1947. So to see this new wave of refugees is very much something that is difficult to comprehend today. The barbarity of what is taking place is beyond belief. Not only the looting, the mass destruction, the killing, the torturing, but even, and I'm sorry to say, the raping of girls and women from the ages of 4 to 82. This is being done by Vladimir Putin's modern-day equivalent of the Nazi Einsatzgruppen, his FSB intelligence service. I thank you for inviting me here today to give this short sort of presentation on Holocaust Remembrance Day. I think we should not only never forget the past, never forget these horrors which have taken place, such as the Holocaust, but at the same time, we need to realize that we cannot allow this new fascism to succeed. We have to fight fascism today as we did 7 decades ago. Thank you very much.
I'm going to invite onto the stage a number of people who are partners to our gathering tonight, and they know who they are, I hope, and they're going to come and join me on the stage now for the next part of our time together, and they're each going to provide a statement from their organisations.
I represent Refugee Action York. Excuse me. RAY welcomes and supports refugees, asylum seekers and migrants to the City of York, helping to provide a warm welcome, practical support and access to services to help newcomers to integrate into their new lives in our city. We are committed to Holocaust Memorial Day because had we been around during the 1930s and 1940s, we would have been doing the same to those fleeing persecution from the Nazis and would also have welcomed survivors who came afterwards. We also recognise that there is much to be learned from the experiences of the 1930s and 1940s, which is why we work to educate the public on the importance of providing a welcoming, safe haven and of standing up to and fighting against fascism wherever it exists.
Good evening. I'm representing York Museums Trust. This day is very important to be involved in the commemoration. As a charity, we manage a range of cultural venues in York that play a key role in sharing stories from and with our communities, whether that is through York Art Gallery, St Mary's Church, the Yorkshire Museum and Gardens, or the Castle Museum at York. We are at the heart of the city and its history. For us, Holocaust Memorial Day is especially pertinent this year, as a few weeks ago one of our venues was subjected to anti-Semitic graffiti, which shows to us that we have much more work to do to become an anti-racist city. We are committed to working with audiences and communities to inspire, share and care for our cultural heritage that encompasses for us Holocaust Memorial Day. Our work with communities is central to our identity in sharing the stories of ordinary people, including those who have been targeted through the Holocaust and other genocides. We're particularly thankful over the past couple of years to York Disability Forum, York LGBT Forum, York Travellers Trust and the York Liberal Jewish Community for their partnership and support in celebrating and sharing the lives of ordinary people.
Good evening. I'm Luke Swolf and I represent York College. York College is a further and higher education college which offers A-levels, vocational courses, apprenticeships, higher education and adult learning courses. We are committed to Holocaust Memorial Day because we know the significance of ensuring our students understand the horrors of the past in a bid to prevent them happening again in the future. We do this through a variety of methods, but during this week alone we have had talks in lessons, a talk to staff and students at lunch today about the Holocaust, and currently have an exhibition in our atrium recounting the plight of the Ugandan Asians under the tyranny of Idi Amin. On a personal level, I love the work that we do to represent Holocaust Memorial Day because I am the grandson of Joseph Swolf. Joseph Swolf was an ordinary person who, during the occupation of the Netherlands, as a Dutch Jew, joined the Dutch resistance and fought to prevent the tyranny of the Nazis as much as he could until he had to escape. He is the son of my great-grandmother, Johanna Zwolf, who was able to be protected in a series of 6 different families' homes during the Holocaust, under floorboards and in attics until the end of the war. And I'm also the great-grandson of Levi Zwolf, who on the 26th of January 1943, 80 years ago today, was walked into the gas chambers of Auschwitz, where his life was ended.
Good evening, my name is Aftar. I'm an ordinary person. I'm chair of the York Interfaith Group and the Sikh by Faith. York Interfaith Group stands shoulder to shoulder in support of Holocaust Memorial Day and all that it strives for, reminding us that this particular moment in history should never be forgot and, importantly, must never repeat. York Interfaith Group brings together ordinary people of faith and no faith to engage in dialogue and debate through mutual respect, understanding and tolerance. As a collective of ordinary people, we are committed to equality, diversity and inclusion. We are committed to making brave choices and fight against injustices for a fairer society for all. As a Sikh and ordinary person, my faith reminds me of the power of service to humanity and helping those in need.
Good evening, I'm Stephen Pitton and I'm here representing the York Travellers Trust, of which I am a trustee. The York Travellers Trust aims to enhance the vibrant and resourceful gypsy and traveller communities in York and surrounding areas. We want to build bridges between gypsies, traveller communities and others to promote community cohesion and increase opportunities and life chances for all. YTT believes this is the most positive way to reduce inequalities and fight discrimination. As we remember all of the people who died in the Holocaust, we are aware of the Romani and Sinti communities who suffered in a parallel way to the Jewish people in Germany, with up to 500,000 being murdered. The York Travellers Trust is committed to Holocaust Memorial Day because we feel that by sharing the history of persecution, we recognise that genocide does not just take place on its own. It's a steady process which can begin if discrimination, racism and hatred are not checked and prevented.
Good evening, my name is Maggie McLean. I represent York Minster and I bring greetings from the Dean and Chapter of York Minster, the Cathedral Church of the Diocese of York. We are committed to Holocaust Memorial Day and the keeping of an act of annual commemoration by the lighting of 600 candles in memory of 6 million people who lost their lives during the Holocaust and in subsequent genocides. We do this because we believe that I can't say that word now, you know what I'm trying to say, others is not the way of a loving and creative God. And it's just our small way of standing in solidarity with others and also to work for a better and more kinder and more resilient world. I think I now have the the great pleasure of inviting onto the stage the Vice-Chancellor of the University of York, Professor Charlie Jeffrey.
Thank you for inviting me to say a few words this evening. I'm Charlie Jeffrey, Vice-Chancellor of the University of York. At the university, we have long been supporters of the Holocaust Memorial Day steering group in York and are honoured to be involved again this year. As part of the citywide programme on Tuesday this week, we hosted author Professor Rebecca Clifford for an open lecture on her recent book, Survivors: Children's Lives After the Holocaust. That involvement reflects our values. The University of York exists for public good. It has social justice at the core of its values. As such, we see it as part of our role, as I know our colleagues at York St John University also do, to bring people together to learn, to explore, and to discuss vital topics such as the history surrounding the Holocaust. In doing so, we stand together in remembering those murdered in the Holocaust and in the genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, and elsewhere. As we have heard, the theme selected by the Holocaust Memorial Trust to shape and provoke discussion in 2023 is ordinary people. The victims of genocide were, of course, ordinary people whose identity, whose perceived difference from others marked them out as targets for persecution. When I was a young academic, I researched genocide, focused on the Nazi regime in Austria, part of Germany at the time. I spent a lot of time in archives trying to understand how ordinary people experienced that time. I tried to understand everyday life against the backdrop of what we came to call the Holocaust. The biggest lesson I learned was that ordinary people were not just victims, but also perpetrators of genocide. Some, of course, in positions of power who committed or ordered murder, but many, many more as bystanders. Some beset by fear, some callously indifferent, some approving of the discrimination and persecution that marked the route to mass murder. And that lesson, that ordinary people are also perpetrators, is so important. We must never forget it. We as ordinary people mustn't be complacent. We must not indulge discrimination. We must not stand by. We must stand firm against prejudice. We must support those who face it. We must, in this city of sanctuary, continue to be a safe haven for those forced to flee persecution. Thank you, and I now hand over to the Lord Mayor, Councillor David Carr, for the reading of the 7 commitments.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 7 commitments. I will read the first one. We recognise that the Holocaust shook the foundations of modern civilization. Its unprecedented character and horror will always hold universal meaning.
We believe that the Holocaust must have a permanent place in our nation's collective memory. We honour the survivors who are still with us and reaffirm our shared goals of mutual understanding and justice.
We must make sure that future generations understand the causes of the Holocaust and reflect upon its consequences. We vow to remember the victims of Nazi persecution and of all genocides.
We value the sacrifices of those who have risked their lives to protect or rescue victims as a touchstone of the human capacity for good in the face of evil.
We recognise that humanity is still scarred by the belief that race, religion, disability or sexuality make some people's lives worth less than others. Genocide, anti-Semitism, racism, xenophobia and discrimination still continue. We have a shared responsibility to fight these evils.
We pledge to strengthen our efforts to promote education and research about the Holocaust and other genocides. We will do our utmost to make sure that the lessons of such events are fully learned.
We will continue to encourage Holocaust remembrance by holding an annual Holocaust Memorial Day. We condemn the evils of prejudice, discrimination, and racism. We value a free, respectful, and democratic society.
My name is Sam. I'm the chair of the City Council's Holocaust Memorial Day Steering Group. I would like to thank everyone who has come today, and especially everyone who has taken part, and the people who have been so heavily involved in organising this and have done so much good work to make sure that we had a fantastic event this evening. There are refreshments outside, and thank you all very much.